as well, right? And now this time we did a recap of that, right? Now, what is market structure? Market structure is basically study of different type of markets to determine the level of competition that exists. Or you can simply say market structure is studying different type of markets to know how these markets behave and operate, right? Then we said that there are four type of market structures that we will talk about: perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition, right? So we are kind of going in the order. We can go in the order. So we have completed perfect competition, and today we'll start off with monopoly. Now, what is perfect competition? The very word perfect shows that this is the highest amount of profit that can exist in any type of market. So for every market structure, what we'll do is that first of all, we'll discuss its characteristics, and then we will look at the graph to understand how it operates. Now, and then we talked about some small things. What is market supply? Market supply is the total supply or combined supply from all the producers in the market, right? And what is market demand? Market demand is combined demand from all the consumers in the market. So why is market demand and market supply important in perfect competition? Because that determines the equilibrium price, right? And then every firm has to sell at that price. What are the characteristics? We very quickly talked about that there are many firms in the market in perfect competition. The firms have homogeneous and identical products. That's another thing that we talked about, right? Then we said that there are no barriers to entry and exit. Any new firm can easily enter and leave the market. The firms are price takers, which means whatever price is prevailing in the market, they have to sell at that price, right? And consumers have complete information, right? So these are the characteristics of perfect competition. Then yesterday we talked about a very interesting, topic, which is the types of profit. So we said that basically either the firm will be making normal profit or the firm will be making abnormal profit. Now, in the short run, right? In the short run, we saw, right, that the firm in perfect competition will make normal profit or abnormal profit. Preet, may I request you to mute yourself, right? Okay, thank you. So in the short run, Preet, would a firm in perfect competition make normal profit or abnormal profit? Short run, I'm talking about, right? Right? So let's see if you get this correct. Yes, abnormal or supernormal profit, it means the same thing. Excellent, right? So if you remember, we looked at the similar graph. I'm just showing you for a quick recap, right? So this is the industry. The left-hand side is the industry graph where my cursor is, and the right-hand side is a single firm, a price taker, as you can see, right? So upward sloping was the market supply, the blue curve. The downward sloping was the market demand, the red line. And then this P, this P, right? This is where this is where the equilibrium price is. Now you extend this equilibrium price to the next graph, right? And then you see that this is the demand curve. This red line would be the demand curve for the for each firm, right? And then you have upward sloping marginal cost, and then you have ATC. So this area of this rectangle is your supernormal profit. However, what happens in the long run? In the long run, this comes down to normal profit. Why does it come down to normal profit? Because like this, it comes down to normal profit because market supply increases. Why does market supply increases? Because now here's the main part. We said if a firm is making just enough profit as other firms in other markets are making, that's normal profit, right? If Mega Lecture is earning just enough profit as much it could have earned by being a restaurant, or as much it could have earned by being a beauty salon or anything, right? So that's normal profit. But if you are earning more than what other market firms are making, then that's abnormal profit, right? Now, if there is normal profit, obviously there's no incentive for new firms to enter the market, right? But since perfect competition firm was making super normal or abnormal profit in the short run, that attracted more firms in the long run, due to which your supply curve of the market, the supply curve, market supply curve over here, right? It shifted to the right. Can you see where my cursor is? It shifted to the right, and the new price, equilibrium price, decreased from P to P1. And this new price P1 became the new demand curve for the firm, and that is how the abnormal profit of a firm reduced to normal profit. Easy? Any confusion so far? Preet, is this clear? Right? So if this all is clear, right, then we will move to the second type of market structures, which is monopoly. Perfect, right? Now you have to understand, uh, let me first show you. So if we have to compare between these four market structures, which we'll do at the end as well, right? But if I have to show you a quick idea that, how it looks like, right? So think about this. So on market structure in the spectrum of competition, right? So over here, right? So most competition, right? On the left, let's say we are writing most competition, and on the right, we are looking at the market structure where there is least competition, right? So nothing but this. The most competition exists in perfect competition, right? By which you would have figured out by now. Then comes in monopolistic competition, which we haven't discussed yet, but we'll obviously talk about it later. Then comes in oligopoly, and the least competition out of all these four market structures is in monopoly, right? Is making sense? Right? Okay. Now have a look at this. Now this is where the four market structures lie in terms of competition between them, right? Okay. Now moving forward, why are we doing monopoly? That would be a better idea. That would be better because then we get a complete picture that how monopoly is complete opposite of what we have just discussed in perfect competition, right? Quite the opposite of what we have discussed in perfect competition. Okay, now our strategy will be the same. So first of all, we'll talk about the characteristics of monopoly. We will take some real life examples so that we get a better idea of how monopoly looks like in real life, and then we'll look at the graph and so on. Okay, now as far as the characteristics are concerned, right? So monopoly, by the very definition, means a single firm in the market or one firm with very high market share, right? So either of the two would be true, right? So single firm, one dominant firm with high market share, right? So that's the first thing about monopoly. Then why this firm? The question that you should be asking yourself, so if there is a single firm in the market, there has to be a reason for it. And the most obvious reason that should come to your mind is that it's difficult for other firms to enter or to penetrate the market. Are you getting me? If there is a single firm in the market, then obviously there is something that is constraining or that is limiting or preventing the new firms to enter the market, right? So what is the case then? There are high and exit barriers, right? Does it make sense, right? Exit barriers. Sometimes these barriers are legal, like, patents and copyrights. Do you remember we talked about this? Or government imposed, like government monopolies in airline and other major and utility companies, right? Are you getting me? So think about this. And exit, I wanted to write exit, right? So there are high entry and exit barriers. Sometimes these barriers are legal, like patents and copyrights. Think about it. What is a patent? Patent is a, a legal document that you need to copy a product, right? So whenever a new discovery is made, whenever something new discovered in the world, then people claim patents for that. So if it was my idea to develop a certain type of technology or product, then no one else can copy that until and unless they pay me some compensation, or until unless I allow them to do that, right? Because this is basically an incentive for the person who is developing or innovator, as you can say, to develop a product, right? And companies sometimes have patents, sometimes individuals have patents and things like that, right? So if there is a legal patent, this happens quite a lot in technology industries and pharmaceutical industries, where you have to come up with new medicines and things like that, but obviously in other markets as well. So if there is a patent protected product, you can't copy it. So that's one problem. Therefore, new firms might have been unable to enter the market, right? So as we saw that a lot of vaccination COVID vaccination, a lot of firms started developing COVID vaccinations, but still, I'm sure not all pharmaceutical companies have the right. They were not successful in their own attempts, or they do not have the right, they do not have the patent to copy that product. Are you getting me? So they will perhaps never be able to produce COVID vaccinations. Whichever firms have already discovered it and they are producing, those will be the one continuing. They will continue producing it, right? Okay. Then sometimes it's the government-owned monopolies. Government-owned monopolies, like government has regulated the market, right? Or government imposed, like government owned monopolies like airline. I was giving you the example. In Pakistan International Airline has been the single firm providing domestic flights within Pakistan for quite some time, but the market was then deregulated, and now we also have some private businesses. Similarly, Pakistan Railway is still owned by the government, and there's only one firm. I'm sure that would be the case in India as well. And then utility companies, and utility companies, basically, I mean the electricity um, and gas producing companies, etc., right? And so on, right? Okay. This being said, so what we have talked about so far, that monopoly is a single firm or one firm with very high market share. First thing. Second thing, that there are very high barriers to entry and exit, and that's why no new firm. Can you give me a second? Just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that, right? So there's a single firm, or there is one firm with a very high market share, they are high barriers to entry and exit. The firm is price maker, right? So this is very opposite to what we saw in perfect competition, where firms are price takers. They take the price, whatever is prevailing in the market. The firm is price maker, which means a single producer can set whatever price it wishes to, right? Are you getting me? So since that single firm has so much market power that it can charge whatever price it wishes to, right? So that's another characteristic of monopoly, right? And the monopoly demand curve, we also sometimes say monopolist, right? The monopolist's demand curve is more elastic, less elastic. So would the demand curve of a monopoly be more elastic or less elastic, Preet? We do know the concept of elasticity, right? So I'm asking you if you expect the demand curve to be more elastic, less elastic. Inelastic, exactly, because there are no substitutes. There are not many options that you can choose from. Demand curve is less elastic, or you could have written inelastic, right? But yeah, that's correct. Very good. Excellent. So these are the four characteristics. Now, let's come to the graph and let's see what the shape of the monopoly is, like how the uh, graph of monopoly looks like. Okay, now the first thing that you need to draw, right, just like any other right graph, that you have to draw two arrows right to each other. Okay, now the next thing, obviously we will label the axes. Just a second, right? So you will label the axes, right? So you have price and cost as always on the y-axis, and you have price and cost on the y-axis, and then you have output or quantity on the x-axis, right? So that's what I'm writing. Then, okay, now we have already discussed that since there is not much competition in the market, the demand curve will be inelastic, right? Now the demand curve is inelastic, right? Okay, now here is where you need to pay attention. So this is your demand curve. Now this is your price, because demand curve also shows you the price, and this is also your average revenue. Breathe. Now, what is average revenue? This might be, a thing that we will be coming across again and again. So it's good time that I explain you that what is average revenue. What comes to your mind when I say average revenue? What comes to your mind? Revenue divided by output. Excellent, right? So I'll just add the word total to it, but I mean, whatever you said was absolutely correct. So total revenue, or revenue divided by total output or output, is basically your average revenue. Exactly. So always remember, price per unit, price per unit, right, is your uh, right, is your average revenue. How so? Because think about this. So revenue is made up of price into quantity, right? So how much you are selling the good for into how much quantity you are selling, that is your revenue, right? We know this. Just a second. And when you divide this by quantity, because what we are doing in average revenue, we're dividing it by the quantity, right? So when you do that by the quantity, automatically the quantity would be gone, quantity would be canceled out with each other, and what you'll be left with would be just the price, right? So price per unit is always your average revenue, right? Easy, good on this? Okay. Now, and this is same for every type of demand curve. So even for the perfect competition demand curve that we did, we said it's the demand, right? That straight horizontal demand curve that we looked at. So that shows you the price. That is also your demand curve, P1. That's also your demand curve. In that case, it was also your marginal revenue, and that was also your average revenue. Easy? We good? Okay. Right. Sorry. Right. So let's keep moving. Now, this is your demand curve in Monopoly, right? And I've made it a little steep, right? You could have made a little more steeper if you want to, right? Okay. Now, to the left of this demand curve would be your, to the left of this demand curve will be your marginal revenue, right? To the left of this demand curve will be your marginal revenue. Now, I did say that when we come to monopoly graph, I'll explain you that why is marginal revenue in this case not the same as your demand curve. Unlike the perfect competition, which I just made, right? So unlike the perfect competition where the demand curve was also the marginal revenue, why is that not the case over here? Because I'll tell you why. Okay, now this is interesting. You have to pay attention. Okay. Now, in this case, when the demand curve is downward sloping, Preet, when the demand curve for any firm is downward sloping, it means that the price keep changing. The price keep changing at different output levels. How so? Let me show you, right? So if I would have chosen this point, right? So this point A shows that if the price of the good is, let's say, whatever, $10, right? Then you'll be able to sell, let's say, 1,000 units. Easy? Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you want to sell something more, if this firm wants to sell, right? This is the demand curve for the firm, that how much is the demand for the firm's product, right? If the firm wishes to sell something more, right? More than 1,000 units, what it needs to do is actually to do what? To reduce the price, right? To kind of give incentive to the consumer, right? So it would need to reduce its price from, let's say, $10 to $8, and then perhaps it's selling something more than 1,000, right? It could be 1,500, it could be like 2,000, right? But like this, right? And similarly, if it wants to sell even more than this, then they would need to reduce their price even further. So let's say with $6, this firm is able to sell 1,800 units and so on and so forth. Is this making sense, right? So what I said over here is that since the price, as you sell more units, you have to reduce price per unit. And since price per unit is always changing in a downward sloping demand curve, therefore marginal revenue would also diminish. Marginal revenue would also diminish. Is it making sense? Right? So in a downward sloping demand curve, marginal revenue would always be to the left of it and not the same, right? So let me write this over here. Points to remember. In case of downward sloping demand curve, marginal revenue to the left of demand curve because price per unit is but not constant and therefore always decreasing. Increase in output, therefore additional unit would contribute less in revenue. Right? Okay, Preet, let's have a look at this. Now, this is a very important point. Now, what did I write over here? I said that for demand curves that are downward sloping, in case of a downward sloping demand curve, the marginal revenue would lie to the left of the demand curve because downward sloping demand curve shows that price per unit because downward sloping demand curve shows that price per unit is always decreasing with increase in output, and therefore each additional unit of good would contribute less in revenue. Does this help? Right? So as we saw in our graph, that to sell more output, right, you have to reduce your price per unit, right? So let's say this was point A, you were selling less output at point A compared to point B, right? And then at C, you are producing even more output. On point D, you are producing even more output. But as you move from A to D, what is happening? Your price per unit, you can see for yourself, right? So your price per unit is decreasing, right? So when the price per unit decreases, this means each additional unit is sold for a lower price, and that's why your marginal revenue is also decreasing. It's lying to the left of it. It's decreasing, it's downward sloping, right? Is it simple? We can move on, right? And it will always be like this for any downward sloping demand curve. Whenever the demand curve will be downward sloping, you will see that the marginal revenue would always lie to the left of that. We good? Okay. Now moving forward from here, you have made the two, demand related curves. Now you have to make two cost related curves. What will be the two cost related curves that you have to make, Preet? For the cost related, what are the two cost related curves that we have that we saw in perfect competition as well, and that we will see over here as well? What are the two cost related curves? Yeah. What are the two cost related curves that we need to draw? Right. Okay, exactly. One is ATC. What about the other one? Right. And the marginal cost. Excellent, right? Now we know that there are two cost related curves that we will show on every market structure. One is known as one is known as marginal cost, which is J-shaped graph like this, right? And the other one is your ATC, which is a U-shaped graph, right? So let's draw that as well, right? So that goes like this, right? Or let's say like this, right? And marginal cost always passes from the lowest point of the ATC. So you can see almost this is the lowest point. So marginal cost is passing from the lowest point of this ATC. So this brings us towards completion of the monopoly graph, right? So this is the monopoly graph that you need to know. Okay. Now, this being said, let's analyze it. Let's analyze this. Okay. So Preet, at what output level the firm maximizes its profit, right? So just like any other market structure, as I said, right, that for all market structures, there is one output level at which the firm maximizes its profit. And what quantity or what level is that? Do you remember? At what output level any firm maximizes its profit? Think again. At what output level the firm maximizes its profit? Do you remember we talked about this, right? So what is the profit maximization quantity? What criteria a firm needs to fulfill, right? At what output level should it produce, in simple words, so that it maximizes its, its profit, right? Yeah. Where revenue is equals to cost, no, Preet, you're forgetting it, right? So I said that the output where the marginal revenue, do you remember yesterday we did this for profit competition, where the marginal revenue for a firm is equals to its marginal cost, where the marginal, that is the output level where the firm will maximize its profit. So basically where this MC, this blue curve, is intersecting with this purple curve, right? Marginal revenue, that would be your profit maximization quantity. So what's the first thing that you need to do? You need to put a dot where the marginal cost is intersecting with marginal revenue. So you bring this dotted line down to the x-axis and you label it what? You label it as QP. This is your profit maximization quantity. Is this making sense, right? Then what you do is you take this further up, and see where is this intersecting with the demand curve, right? So this is where it touches the demand curve, right? So you will put a dot here again, and then you will join it to the y-axis, right? So this is the price per unit that you are selling each unit of the good for, right? And where is this cutting with the ATC? This dotted line, where is this cutting with the ATC? So this cuts with the ATC at this point, right? Yes or no? At this point. Now you have to connect this to the y-axis again, right? And this will tell you that how much it costs you to produce each unit of the good. So how much is the ATC, right? How much is the average total cost of producing that good? Does it make sense? Preet? You want me to do all over again? So first thing that you have to remember, so just like I said that there will be few criterias and conditions that you need to remember in market structures, the most important thing that you need to remember that every firm, every type of market structure, right, that we will analyze, we will always look, when we start analyzing it, we will always look at the output level where marginal revenue is equals to marginal cost. Why? Because this is the profit maximization output for any firm at any point in time, whether that be profit competition, whether that be monopoly, whether that be monopolistic competition, or whether that be oligopoly. Is making sense? Preet? So what we did, let's look at this one more time, right? So what we did, right? Because this sometimes get tricky. So let's do it all over again. After making the graph like the way we did, right? So we made a steep downward sloping demand curve, which is the orange line, which you can see on the graph, right? Then the next thing that we did was to, right? Then we made this purple line to the left of the demand curve, which is your marginal revenue. Then we made two cost curve. One was the blue one is the marginal cost, which is J-shaped graph, as we always know. And then the U-shaped is your ATC, right? After you have done this, what you'll do, we know that profit maximization quantity for any businesses with its marginal cost and marginal revenue are equal. So the purple and the blue line are intersecting over here. So you bring this dotted line down and you label it as QP. This is your profit maximization quantity. Then what you do next, you take this dotted line straight up until it touches the demand curve. Then where it touches the demand curve, you connect that with the y-axis so that you can know how much is the price that the firm is charging for each unit of the good. And then you see that where is this dotted line cutting with your ATC, and then you connect it with the y-axis, and that is your average total cost, which shows how much it costs you to produce the good, right? That is your ATC, right? Now, the thing is, price is higher than ATC, as we know, right? So let's assume the price per unit is, I don't know, 250 rupees or whatever it is, right? And it costs you almost, let's say, 210 rupees to produce that good, right? Are you getting me? So we can see right away, straight away, that the profit per unit that the firm is making on each unit is 40 rupees or dollars or whatever, right? Now, which area would represent the profit? So if per unit profit is like 250 minus 210, which is 40, and the total quantity that you are selling is, let's say, 500 or 1000 units or whatever, right? So the area of this shaded region, right? So the area of this shaded region would show you the abnormal profit that this uh, monopoly would make at this point in time. Is this clear? Breathe. Is it making sense? Right? Did you get every bit of it? Or if there is still any confusion, kindly ask me then. Yeah, right. Just give me a second. Okay. Now, okay. Perfect. Perfect. So now comes in the question, Preet, that is this a short run, that the graph that we made for, or is this long run, right? Now we're talking about a monopoly, and we discussed while we were talking about the characteristics of this market that they're very high entry and exit barriers. They are very high entry and exit barriers. Now, what does this mean? This means that it's almost impossible, right? Right? It's almost impossible for the new firms to enter the market. Now, just imagine if it's really difficult for the new firms to enter the market because entry barriers are really high. And we did talk about that in detail, that either entry barriers are high because of legal constraints, like you don't have the patent to produce that product, or you do not have the copyrights to produce that product, or it is because of government imposed restrictions, right? That it's only the government organization that is operating in that industry, right? Or anything of the sort. Now, when these things exist, it's impossible for any new firm to enter the market. When these things exist, it's impossible for any new firm to enter the market. And if no new firm enters the market, even in the long run, then the graph of monopoly will look like the same both in short run and long run, since in long run, no new firm is entering the market. Did you get this? Preet, right? Now, the short and long run equilibrium, of right? Since the entry barriers, right, therefore, no new is able to enter, hence the monopoly graph look the same both in short and long run. Monopoly would continue to make normal profit even in the long run. Wait, did you get this? Okay, now let's, you know, uh, discuss this statement, right? Now, what did I say? I said that entry barriers are very high in a monopoly, and therefore no new firm can enter the market, right? When no new firm is entering the market, then the monopoly would not get any competition even in the long run. And when that happens, right? So the monopoly would continue making a normal profit even in the long run, right? This makes sense. So what happens over here, that whatever abnormal profit this monopoly is making, it will be same in the long run as well. So it stays like this. There's no change. So for monopoly, unlike perfect competition, where we where we made two graphs in perfect competition, one for the short and one for the long run. In monopoly, there's no such difference, right? It will always be abnormal profit that the monopoly will make because there's no competition. When abnormal profit converts into normal profit, when there is competition. But in monopoly, since entry barriers are high and no new firm is entering the market, then it would stay like this. Does it make sense? Preet, any confusion so far? Anything? So this, you know, brings us towards completion of monopoly. But if there's any confusion, anything not clear, anything that requires more explanation, you may ask me. Right? Yeah. Is everything clear, Preet?
Yes, I had a small doubt.
Yeah, sure, sure. Go ahead.
Sir, like, is it possible for a monopoly to have a normal profit in the long run, or
No, never,
sir,
never.
like the
Hmm.
my sir, like for example, if it is a completely new industry
Right.
and only a single firm has entered it, and it is only facing normal profits.
Okay.
So
So think about it. Preet, in the short run, businesses face in the short run, like in short run meaning early on when a new firm has entered any market, right? Even in perfect competition, we saw that the firms were making abnormal profit. Because think about this, there is a market which no one is, catering to, and there are few firms that are only producing that product, right? So there is a huge chunk of people, just like, let me give you the example for that. So let's say Food Panda was the pioneer, I don't know, to start ordering, to start delivering food orders to their customers. Then the market was huge. People really wanted that service, but there were not a lot of firms out there doing that. It was only Food Panda. So Food Panda was earning high amounts of profit, right? Is this clear so far? So think about it. Let's start from the beginning, how it works in a chronological order, right? So initially, there's a market. People have a certain need, like to order their food, to get their food delivered at their homes. Food Panda discovered this need. Food Panda started providing the service. There were not a lot of firms that were doing it, and they were very happy. They were making huge amounts of profit. Later, when other companies saw, oh, right, this is a good profitable venture that we should also start, then multiple firms started. There are a lot of local firms in Pakistan that are doing it. I'm sure it would be the same for other countries as well. Now, the market is the same. There are almost same number of customers which there were previously, but now there are more firms catering to that demand. So now there are perhaps 5, 6, 7, 8 firms. Now the market demand gets divided over those 7, 8, 9, 10 firms. Are you getting me? So each firm is now getting a small chunk of that. So the abnormal profit of Food Panda in the short run comes down to normal profit. This is the entire story. Now, how do we look at it from monopoly point of view? So there was a market, let's say PIA. Let's take the example of Pakistan Railway, right? So there are people who prefer to travel through railway because of whatever reasons. Now, Pakistan Railway was the only firm producing the service back in the day, like couple of years ago. And again, even today, it's the only firm that is providing that service. No new firm was able to enter. So that entire market demand is just satisfied by one firm, and therefore they make abnormal profit. Are you getting me? So that's the thing. So in markets where entry barriers are low, right? In markets where entry barriers are low, that is where the abnormal profit would come down to normal profit. Otherwise, it stay like that. Did you get me? New firms which drives profit of from normal normal profit. Did you get this? Right? So that's the idea. But since in monopoly, it's not possible for any new firm to enter given the high entry barriers. Therefore, the monopoly continues making the abnormal profit that was it was making even in the short run. So everything stays the same. So everything stays the same. Does this help, Preet? Preet, this is making sense? Okay, perfect, perfect. So that's the idea. Okay, now what we'll do tomorrow, I'll quickly give you an overview of what we'll start off tomorrow, right? And then we'll stop here for today, and then we'll continue from there tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we are starting off with monopolistic competition, right? That's another very interesting market structure. And I'll give you some real life examples that what type of markets are monopolistic competition. But to quickly give you a hint, I was talking about in one of the very early classes we had on market structures. I said that, have you ever wondered a market like soaps, right? For soaps and shampoos, consumer products I'm talking about, right? Soaps, shampoos, cell phones, clothes are a good example, right? So there are multiple brands and every brand has its own specialty. And you must have also noticed that they spend a lot of amount on branding, right? A lot of amount time and money branding their products, advertisements, commercials, and all that, right? So this type of market structure is known as monopolistic competition. So tomorrow, we will discuss that what are the characteristics of monopolistic competition, how it operates, and what is the distinction between short run and the long run, just like we have done for all the other market structures as well, right? And then towards the very end, we'll be left with oligopoly. And by that, like when we complete off with oligopoly, we will be almost done with this unit 2, right? And then we'll start off with unit 3. Does this help? Read. This is good. So I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. I'm glad all the questions were answered, right? So I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Take care and have a good night. Bye.